Hey guys, welcome to the Bionicle Inspiration series. This episode focuses on anime mocks. So I often find people say, well, what do I build? It's all well and good to build something, but I don't know what to build. And I find a lot of people in the Bionicle community tend to fall back to very set things. Video games, movies, characters that they've just made themselves, or anime. A lot of people in the Bionicle community seem to watch anime, and a lot of people seem to get inspired by it, whether it's building a specific character from an anime or taking a few of the concepts from specific characters and then applying that to a mock of your own. And I think that is perfect for an episode. So that's what this episode is going to be on. We're going to look at 3 anime-inspired mocks and cover some of the techniques that you yourself could possibly try on one of your own mocks. Also, this episode is a good little reminder to watch some anime or any type of TV show or movie that you like, and maybe you can build some of the characters from there in Bionicle form, or take some of those concepts and apply them to your own original creations. So let's get started. The first mock that we have today is by Avery Robertson and his Annie Leonhardt from the anime Attack on Titan. Something that I like about this mock right off the bat is the really awesome sword designs. Now, we've got these sort of sword holster thingamajigs, and then 2 awesome looking swords. And what I think super cool about them is that they're entirely built out of system. And you don't often see that, A lot of weapons are kind of easier to make with Bionicle parts because, heck, with the amount of Bionicle and Hero Factory and various other CCBS pieces that we've got, a lot of the parts just lend themselves to looking or actually being weapons. But I think that's a really cool design, is to use some system parts to create that desired effect. And I think that does that very well on this mock. So that's a really cool notion. Maybe you could try that. Something I really like about this mock is the use of the 2 Paraka AVAC masks. Now, if we take a look at some of the photos of the character in the anime, we can kind of see on her waist here this sort of cloth design thing going on there, and how that's very effectively matched with the 2 AVAC masks kind of hugging the waist there. It's really cool in my opinion. That's a really awesome part use to use masks like that. And I think that's really cool because masks are so often used as, well, a mask or a head design kind of thing. But using masks as something you can put on another part of the body, I think is really creative and really clever. And especially with the Paraka, how the mouth is technically open so you can see the teeth. You have a little additional area to play with. Can you put something in through the mouth there? You almost have some connection points. I say that with air quotes because, it's not really a proper connection point, but you can certainly put pieces through it. And I think that's really cool, and it creates a really awesome looking shape there, and it really matches the original source material. Speaking of system, as I was saying before, really cool to see a system-built head. Obviously this is a human character, and that is a little bit harder with Bionicle pieces. Obviously you could use some of the Ultra Build Star Wars heads, which very much look like human heads, but they may not have the exact right hairstyle or face design that you're after, so maybe just doing something like this, grabbing some system parts and making a head design like so. It looks fantastic, it suits very well. Having little bits of other systems sporadically throughout the mock kind of creates a nice sense of cohesion throughout the mock. So that's also a really nice addition there. And also cool to see the minifigure hands used as, or minifigure arms rather, used as actual hands. Looks quite organic and looks fantastic. Also cool that the face is just neutral. It doesn't need any eyes or a mouth or anything, but it still does the job. Yeah, that's really cool. And that's pretty much it from this mock. Final little thing that I think is very, very clever is on the back here, we have that sort of dual wing emblem. Looks fantastic. Really clever way to do that. Really simple, just using those 2 Chima wings there. Brilliant design. And that's about it for this mock. Let's move on to the next one, which is a mock by Joxon, which is called Tsukiko. Probably pronouncing that wrong. My bad. So obviously this is, to my knowledge, correct me if I'm wrong, not actually inspired by any one anime character and is just genuinely inspired by typical anime girl characters, much like this. And I think that's really cool. You don't have to specifically base a character off an actual character. You can just take themes or ideas from anime and make a mock out of that. So this is a good example of that in my opinion. I think let's immediately start talking about this hair design. I think it's very, very clever how Joxon has done this, simply repeating some of these trans purple claw pieces to create a really cool looking fringe design. I think that looks so fantastic, and honestly, all those parts repeated like that, it had me confused as to what the actual part was. I thought it was some kind of tooth piece or something, but no, it's just repeated elements. And I think that's so creative and so clever. And it's something that I think is a really clever technique with mocking, is to just repeat parts. Having that repetition and things like that can create some really interesting, awesome desired effects. And I think that this is a perfect example of how awesome that can look on a mock. Speaking of the hair, very creative and very clever to use some of those trans purple parts to kind of create the two pigtails coming down. But I think it's even more clever how Joxon has attached that. So if we look at the back here, we can see that the two red Hero Factory shell pieces, which kind of form a bow, which is another very clever use of color and parts there, we can see that the hair just stems out from a ball joint there, and that's just creative and that's just clever. The parts flow so nicely and just look fantastic and get the desired shape. And obviously those two bow Hero Factory shells are attached up top there, as you can see on the front, with some lightsaber rods or some kind of clip piece attaching them directly onto the head. So I think that's really clever to kind of think outside the box with how you actually place pieces. You know, look at the various different connection points and see how can you attach this on the mock, because it leads to very creative things much like that. Again, we've got another system built head here, which is very, very cool. Very nice to see that blended so nicely with other Bionicle parts. And again, we have a very neutral face, which looks fantastic. Of course, you could use some stickers with that, or, you know, like I said, you could use Ultra Build heads or anything really. But, you know, this is just one idea. You can do anything you want, of course. Absolutely love the dress design here. Simply building it off one of these sort of round clips with 8 connection points on it and then having the dress stem out of that is genius. It gets the job done. It helps create that perfect circle there. Looks fantastic. And then I love the awesome part use of having those 1x2 plates that have those 3 tooth pieces sticking out on them to create kind of frills at the end of the dress. Gets the job done, looks fantastic. And again, more repeated parts that together, having it all in one there, creates a lovely sense of unity and just looks fantastic. So a brilliant way to do a dress design there. And overall, a brilliant mock. So fantastic work, Joxon. Let's move on to the final mock in this episode, which is by Mike Neves and is from the anime Evangelion, and this is EVA Unit 2. So first off, just want to make a note on this foot design used on the mock here. Looks fantastic, has an amazing amount of posability. It has the sort of toes, so it's able to kind of get that posability on the foot, which you very rarely see on a mock, and that's so cool, because it allows this mock to have some insane posability, which I'll get to a little later. But first off, it's really cool to see some of those Hero Factory arm pieces there used throughout the foot to create a lot of the shaping on that. And it reminds me how the previous mocker we saw, Joxon, he uses those parts quite a lot, as you're about to see with all of the mocks that I'm going to post. And those parts are such a useful piece. There's a lot of connection points on them. They're a great shape to be able to achieve some very unique shaping on a mock. And, you know, like he's used it as a mouth design or kind of creating interesting curves or fingers, all sorts of things like that. So if you're after one piece that you really want to get a good amount of and to use in a mock, I highly recommend these parts because you can use them for so many things, like fingers or shaping or anything. Definitely check that out because that's such an amazing piece. And it creates such a fluid, awesome foot design here. So going back to the posability, this thing is incredible with the amount of poses that it can get. There's various shots that you're going to see here of just some of the poses that it can get into. You know, it can stand up and crawl and look like it's running, all sorts of cool things. And, I mean, that's quite simply done, as you can see here, looking at the knee joint. Sort of has that little extra bit to help create a bit more curves and things like that. And we can see that each joint is kind of connected through some type of ball joint, which those parts are extremely helpful, and most mockers, AFOLs, Bionicle builders, whatever you want to call yourselves, that I have talked to absolutely love these parts. So if you're a little new to it, definitely pick up and use some ball joints because those things are perfect to create posability, and those things are perfect to just go crazy with. A lot of Hero Factory used on this mock too to really create that smooth, awesome aesthetic that the original source material definitely has. So awesome to see Hero Factory used so effectively here because of its natural smooth texture. Really complements the mock and complements the original source material. And finally, here's some shots of this amazing complex head design. It's cool to see how much flex tubing is used in it, as well as various system parts, and also interesting to see that not all of those parts are attached, like some of these white claws at the front there. It's amazing to see how much work and effort and little fiddly tiny details went into that head, but the result is almost perfect. And I often find that when using system for a really complex head design, definitely take the time and have the patience to just go ham bone on it because there are so many little pieces and clever techniques and things. Just play and experiment. Do a little bit of trial and error and see where you can go. Definitely pour in some time and energy into getting the best that you can out of that because it's definitely worth it, as we can see on this mock. Anyway, that is about it for anime-inspired mocks. Hopefully, you enjoyed the episode. Hopefully, you had a good time. If you want to see some of the mocks that you saw in today's episode, or check out some of the other mocks that these people have made, be sure to check the links in the description because you'll see it there. Also, in the links in the description are some of the links to my social media where you can chuck me a message and suggest some of your own mocks for the show, and I'll happily do so. Or if you want to suggest a theme for a future episode, whether it's custom heads or custom torsos or whatever, you can definitely recommend some of those, and I'll record some. Also, don't be shy if you've built something because you got inspired from the show. Chuck me a message there. I'd love to see what you've done. That's about it for today's episode. Thank you very much for watching. I'm going to see you in the next one. Bye, guys.